In our last video we talked about simplifying expressions, which is a little bit different than actually solving an equation. When you're simplifying an expression, you're only applying math operations to either one side of the equal sign or in a situation where there actually is no equal sign. When you're solving equations, however, whatever math operations you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. The end goal of solving an equation is to get some variable, usually x or y, by itself. When we're solving equations, the order of operations we use is exactly reversed from what we used when we were simply simplifying expressions. When we simplified expressions, we used PEMDAS, or parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and then subtraction. When we're solving equations, we're going to start with subtraction, and then addition, and then move on to division and multiplication. Again, the goal of solving an equation is to get some variable, in this case x, by itself. And according to our reverse PEMDAS, I start with subtraction and addition. My first step is to get rid of this plus 5, and I can do that by subtracting 5 from the x. The rule for equations is, whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to also subtract 5 from the 9. And I'm left with 9 is equal to 2 times x. So now I'm left with a simple 2 times x. Because the 2 and the x are connected by multiplication, to get rid of the 2, I'm going to divide by 2. And following the rules of fractions, both 2's cancel out. Since I divided the right side of the equation by 2, I also have to divide the left side by 2. So I'm left with 9 over 2. And that's my final answer. X is equal to 9 over 2. As a rule, fractions are not very much fun to work with. They're a bit more complicated, they have special rules, and they have a lot of opportunities for mistakes. So I like to get rid of my fractions as soon as possible. You can get rid of a fraction by multiplying the entire equation by the denominator of your fraction. In this case, I have two denominators, the 4 and the 2. So I'm going to multiply the entire equation by 4, and that should cancel out both denominators. Remember that when you multiply across parentheses, you have to distribute that multiplication across every term in the equation. So in this case, my equation becomes 4 times 5, that's 20. That's going to be equal to 4x over 4 plus 4 over 2. In my first fraction, the 4's cancel out. In my second fraction, the 2 on the bottom cancels out the 4, leaving a 2 behind. So I can rewrite my entire equation as 20 is equal to x plus 2. Then I subtract 2 from both sides, and I'm left with 18 is equal to x. In this equation, I'm going to have to simplify the expression on either side before I can begin solving the equation. So I'm going to distribute my 3 across the first parentheses, and I get 6 minus 3x. On the other side, I distribute the 2 across that parentheses, so I get 2 times x and 2 times a negative 3, or 2x minus 6. So my new equation is 6 minus 3x is equal to 2x minus 6. Now I begin the process of combining like terms. Eventually I want to have all of my x's on one side of the equation and all of my numbers on the other. So I'm going to start by subtracting 2x from both sides. And I'm left with 6 minus 5x is equal to negative 6. Next, I'm going to minus 6 from both sides. And now I'm left with negative 5x is equal to negative 12. My last step is to divide both sides of the equation by a negative 5. So I'm left with the equation that positive x is equal to negative 12 over negative 5. And when you divide a negative by a negative, they become a positive. So really my final answer is just x is equal to 12 over 5. Whenever you have two fractions on opposite sides of an equal sign, you can employ a technique called cross multiplication. And that is where you multiply at a diagonal across the equal sign and set both products equal to each other. So in this case, I could multiply 2 times 1 minus x and set that equal to 6 times x plus 3. Or 2 times 1 minus x is equal to 6 times x plus 3. Then I distribute my 2 and my 6, so I get 2 minus 2x is equal to 6x plus 18. I combine my like terms by adding 2x to both sides and subtracting 18 from both sides. And I'm left with the equation that negative 16 is equal to 8x. I divide both sides by 8, and I'm left with x is equal to negative 16 over 8, which I can simplify to be negative 2.